In a slight diversion away from the personal targeting program being used on me by our corrupt and self-serving system, another form of targeting does rear its ugly intrusive lens in this video. It seems the government has designs on targeting the whole population now, after hearing some extremely worrying moves in the pipeline for us all. If the population is ignorant or apathetic about covert targeting operations on secretly selected individuals, maybe they will take more notice when their lives are personally affected. But given the servile acceptance by nearly all over the last year, with the brave exception of a tiny minority, I doubt any meaningful backlash will take place, but a backlash is most definitely needed. Even though all the vulnerable people, old and not so old, and those millions of others volunteering their bodies for a vaccination against the virus affecting a relatively minuscule percentage of the population, there's been talk of masks becoming the norm over the next few years and beyond. Social distancing is also being touted as the norm from now on, but as worrying is the consideration of facial scans to allow people into pubs and other venues. Outside of China, Britain is one of the most surveilled populations on Earth, and yet the government still isn't content with the hyper-snooping and data accumulation. Their greedy, perverted lust for knowing everything about us is unquenchable. What was the point of vaccinations if we still can't return to normality? We saved the NHS. We've adhered to the guidelines and regulations, even though members of the government have done the opposite. Figures have been manipulated, scaremongering a potent daily mantra from mainstream media, who are gleefully complicit in aiding the government in its goals. The goalposts have often been moved from that original slogan of saving the NHS, and we've had 3 lockdowns which only served to ruin more lives as the virus bided its time before recommencing infecting people and harming the vulnerable once lockdown has ended. Millions of lives and livelihoods have been decimated, and yet this government of mostly privileged toffs still want more devastation, conformity and servility. They are fucking over the people, and the people are mostly allowing it. Having given this terrible state of affairs minutes of deep thought and concentration, I've arrived at a remedy. But it's not one where anti-lockdown protesters are the answer, though they could feature as part of the solution. The police, shocking as they have been as part of my targeting, are the most viable solution. They are probably aware that within a few decades robots or robocops will replace them. Not all at once, but a human majority police force will very likely not exist. The police used to have a job for life, but those times are long gone, and the role of policing will mostly be automated with AI and the aforementioned robots, putting a human police service on the employment scrap heap along with millions of others. The police are currently obliged to enforce orders they'd rather not enforce, those ever-changing and sometimes confusing rules and regulations implemented under the banner of COVID-19. When not on duty, does the average copper think our hyper-surveillance state is the way Britain should be heading? Should we be facially scanned everywhere we go, both outside and to access pubs, clubs, gigs and anything else? I would hope the answer would be, of course not, because these highly invasive tracking and surveillance aids are yet another means to control the population, and that includes them. The pretense that such privacy-invading technology is for our safety is a nonsense. It only serves big tech corporates and controlling governments. The police, with help from the army perhaps, are the only viable way to put a halt to these invasive snooping measures. If any change for the better is to take place, where we can have our freedoms back and not live the dystopian future envisaged by these overprivileged, power-hungry hooray Henrys and Henriettas in charge of everything we do, then it befalls our police force or service to act soon. Each police force around the UK needs to connect with each other and discuss ways of getting our freedom back. Boris needs to sack his science advisors, sack S.A.G.E, and replace with any of the more important signatories to the Great Barrington Declaration. Any notions of implementing facial scanning technology and COVID passports domestically has to be halted in its tracks. The police have to get Boris to either resign or sign legally binding documents that give us our freedoms back. We don't want to be forced or shamed into wearing masks, and we don't want to observe social distancing anymore. The majority of the population have been vaccinated. Unless I've been misinformed, this means those vaccinated should no longer suffer with serious illness or even death. So let's have our lives back, and let's see the police do something they can truly be proud of, and we can be truly proud of them, as they save the population from a future our overreaching, corporatocracy-leaning, power-crave government wish to enslave us with. To accomplish this, the populace will have to endure a police-less society for one day, possibly two, but it's a price definitely worth paying if the police can be the saviours in a peaceful but essential revolution as they march to Downing Street and are ushered past the security gates for an historic meeting with Boris. If this doesn't materialise, we become a society of forever monitored and surveilled serfs, and that is no way to live. We cannot allow this government to continue on its path to a permanent surveillance state.